I am enjoying my days as I sit here in the bed after a 20-minute workout with Joe. The sun is out, the birds are chirping, and I'm listening to Joe's podcast on body image. As the sun fades in and out, it reminds me of the sorrow I've been experiencing for months and the happy moments I've had too. This is new for me. I've lost control while gaining control. My health has declined. I've spent 2 years battling the bedsick lifestyle. I've never been so uncapable, yet I have no choice but to be still. I get to do what I always wanted. I get to focus on my household without working too. Juggling work while being a stay-at-home mom was hard work, especially in a toxic relationship. Now I'm forced to rest. Yes, even my mind. I used to be constantly go, go, go in my mind. Repetitive thoughts, always learning, always thinking, even while asleep. I remember one of my small group friends prayed with me right before I got COVID. At that time, COVID had took over society for 2 years. I managed to be fine. She gave me a word from the Lord. It was rest. I was shocked because I thought I was resting. I was only working part-time. I just moved back into the salon from taking a break. I was temporarily at a beauty retail store, and I did hair at home, part-time. At this time, my youngest was going into full-time kindergarten. I always made sure I stayed somewhat independent, although when I had my last child, my spouse and I agreed that I could stay home. I had already been staying at home with my third child and partially with my second child right before she went to kindergarten. She stayed home with me at the age of 4. So I always worked even though I was a stay-at-home mom. I worked approximately 30 hours a week, and that's full-time for a hairstylist. I did go down to probably about 20 hours a week at certain times while I had the babies. I did get help from my mother-in-law so I could work during the days sometimes. Evenings and weekends, they were with my spouse. I was moderately an active woman in my 20s and early 30s. If I wasn't at the gym, I was walking or jogging at the park often. I even changed my diet to no dairy or fast food for 2 years at age 20. At the age of 37, 2 years into the pandemic is when I got COVID. I recovered fine. About 4 weeks later, I got COVID again, but I believe it was another strand, and my body was declining. Not able to sleep because I was gasping for air as soon as my eyelids would close. My lungs felt like sandbags, and I had months of trying to do exercises to keep my mobility, but it would cause the COVID to flare up. My mind was declining. My mind had to finally rest. My voice was almost gone. It hurt to talk, sing, or pray out loud. My stomach muscles were non-existent. Fast forward 2 years, my chiropractor pulled my spine up. Suddenly, and I mean suddenly, my posture returned. It was like what happened was my vagus nerve was not impacted anymore, and it sent signals to my muscles, including my lungs. I could finally get air into my lungs. It has been a year now, and I was back to jogging. I worked for 6 months, 40 hours a week. I was, however, still struggling with my health. Every other week was a struggle if I did not get kale juice into my system. While I worked for 6 months, I was in a brand new career. I'm almost halfway done with nursing school, and I did that during COVID, before I got COVID. So I was in the medical office doing admin work. I learned the Epic computer system, which is very complicated, and that was validated by longtime staff members at my children's doctors. They were struggling when I went in to take my child there, and they were transitioning to the Epic computer system. And so needless to say, I was learning a new job, a new computer system, and I had confronted my spouse, as I had been doing for 14 years, But this time I had to do something different. I had to move. So living in my household was intolerable, unhealthy, and stupid. This was our fourth or fifth separation, but I couldn't live like that anymore. Why did I have to move, you ask? If one person won't leave or change, someone has to move. So, side note story, our first year of marriage, something happened, something that was very obvious and I could see. So, that turned into a big argument, and I told him to get out. He apologized over and over and over and over and was very serious with his apology. But I was a strong woman, and I said, no, this is ridiculous. So I packed my things, and I took my 2 children, and we left and spent the night over my aunt and uncle's. So I'm not going to go into the details, but when I moved out, the process of moving, the process of establishing myself and taking care of my 2 kids, going back and forth between homes, having them over to the apartment on the weekends. I didn't have beds yet for them. I was struggling, but I just knew I had to get out the home. I saw my kids every single day. I read books to them, took them to parks, played with them and the dog, saw them every day after work, and I didn't leave the house until it was time for them to go to bed. And I would wake up, go to work, my new job, still struggling with my health. And at the same time, I was dealing with repercussions of leaving a toxic relationship. There are always consequences when this happens. I was okay, holding up for months. Eventually, the mental torture took a toll. 5 months was the highest torture, and the consequence was no longer worth it. In these type of situations, people will talk to your support system. They will talk to your friends, your family, and create believable lies. They will manipulate your children into thinking things about you that are not true. This causes division and essentially mental abuse on the kids. Lying to a child to make them think negative things or lies about their other parent or sibling is sickening. Some people, my therapist, who was married for 17 years to a verbal abuser. Side note, verbal abuse is obvious, right? While emotional abuse, mental abuse is not. Anyways, she left her spouse after 17 years of marriage, and he punched her for the first time ever. It's a fact that when people leave toxic, abusive relationships, that it will get worse when they leave. It's consequence, repercussion. So mental torture while learning a new career and taking care of 2 homes was hard. It hit really hard. I lost friendships because the church community just didn't agree with things, and I lost a lot. So it was me and God only. My nervous system was shot. I moved back into the house after 6 months, and suddenly I was just in the bed for half the day. My muscles were more tense. I developed lumps all over my body. I had a problem. I was suddenly shutting down. Everything that I had gone through finally hit me. Now, I can do nothing but wash dishes, cook, clean, drive the kids to and from school, shop, get groceries, get ready. But it takes forever. My airways at night get narrow. Sometimes I wake up gasping for air. Sometimes. But when I wake up, I lay there and I can feel my airways opening, and I have to get oxygen before I get up. I just got done with a 20-minute workout with Joe. As I look out the window, the sun brings me joy. My shoulder's a little tense, lumps still throughout my body, but they're going away. I walked yesterday. Last week I worked out too. Starting slow is not normal for me, but I have to. I feel like I'm in physical therapy. I lost my physical abilities due to the emotional blows over and over and over again. I've been hurt before, but it took 6 years to get here. This time it took 6 months. I was strong once. It took 6 years to take me out, My mind felt like a light went out back then. Dr. Caroline's book, it's called Who Shut Off My Brain, validated that experience that I had. For 6 years, I had no idea it was from abuse because I didn't know abuse existed outside of the physical. I now understand how over time I went from strong to weak. After 9 years of healing and being fully healed, I was strong enough to leave. That's when I moved into the apartment. Because toxicity does not work when you're healthy. But, for example, a newly healed bone, fresh out of the cast, is still fragile. As you walk with once a broken leg, it gets pretty strong. But 6 months after getting strong, blow after blow, that leg is going to crack again, easier than it did before. It will never be the same, but it will heal again. However, it will avoid the blows this time. It will stick with low-impact workouts for a while. It's more aware of how it got hurt before, so it will have protective gear around it. Us as humans, we have to have boundaries, standards, and no nonsense. Protect your mind and your heart. So now I don't give excuses for foolishness. There's no time for that, no room for that. That bone cannot handle a third breaking. Once you hit an older age, especially. Now, when you're younger, it's different. Children have a certain resilience. But when you're older, you're more aware. Babies, toddlers, and kids at least don't remember much, but adults do. At some point, praying, pressing through, and standing is foolishness. That's biblical. If you're a soccer player, a soccer star, that's your career. If you break your leg on the soccer field twice in the same spot, you get older and you realize retirement from that career would be wise. You have to preserve your leg. It's not stupid or having a lack of faith. It's wise to understand that the game of soccer won't change. It's gonna be blow after blow. It's gonna be hard. Of course, people could change the game. They could change some rules. But after 15 years of the same thing, a spade is a spade. No matter how hard you focus on the Lord, get closer to Christ, become kinder, more loving, try to bring them along, you can't make them come. Especially if they're committed to acting the Christian way, but there's a lack of conviction and conversation, or their behavior and what they use to cope. They teach others one thing and do the opposite. If you tell someone, don't you have a conviction for smoking weed, but then you do it yourself? Even having the same excuses as the other person, that's nonsense. So if soccer remains the same after people complaining or confronting the dangers of the sport, they're obviously not listening and they don't care and they don't see a problem with it because somehow they benefit from the games. They profit or they get more viewers. So someone who betrays you or abuses you benefits from keeping you around. The only way the game would change at this point is if many people protested. Accountability by a group of people is the only way. But typically, in relationships where toxicity thrives, the only people who have seen the evidence or experienced the betrayal are few. And the abuser keeps a very wonderful countenance with others. Often the ones accusing the abuser are pointed as mental and crazy. But mental abuse causes reactions. It's called self-defense, mental self-defense. Healing the second bone fracture has allowed me to sit here in the bed and reflect on the truth. The sun has been covered by the clouds, but the fresh air smells nice. No one's in my ear. It's me and God. No one can tell me anything. I got so much advice before. For 14 years, advice after advice after advice. But it's me and God. This is my story. Nobody knows, but I know. And I know better. A spade is a spade. An upside down heart with a weapon on the end. it is what it is.